What if I told you that the deadly cold of the endless plains can be survived with only what you have under your feet? Imagine an endless night when the temperature drops rapidly below 40 degrees and the wind knocks down anyone who dares to stand up straight. In such inhuman conditions, a modern traveler without special high-tech equipment would perish in a matter of hours, freezing to death in the middle of the white silence. However, the indigenous peoples of North America survived in this icy hell for centuries without plastic, synthetics, or stationary heating systems. Their main secret was not in fighting nature, but in a deep, almost mystical understanding of its hidden mechanisms. They knew how to turn an ordinary snowdrift into a warm oven, and how to make their own bodies work like hot coals. It was an art of survival, honed by generations of ancestors and paid for with the lives of thousands who failed to adapt. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how a bunch of dry grass saved limbs from inevitable amputation, and why snow was considered a better blanket than any animal skin. Are you ready to learn the truth about what saved lives where, it would seem, only certain death awaited? For most modern people, deep snow is associated exclusively with cold, dangerous frostbite and inevitable death. But for an experienced plains dweller caught in a storm, it was the main building material and a life-saving insulator. Native Americans understood the physics of snow cover long before the advent of scientific terms and laboratories for studying thermal conductivity. Fresh, loose snow consists of almost 90% air, making it one of the best natural insulators in the world. If a lone hunter was suddenly caught in a snowstorm far from the main camp, he did not try to run through the dense wall of wind. Such an attempt would only lead to a rapid loss of precious strength and disorientation in space. Instead of fighting a futile battle, he would look for a deep, dense snowdrift, preferably on the leeward side of a hill or in a ravine. This was a place where the wind could not reach him directly, giving him a chance of survival. Using wide snowshoes or simply his hands, protected by thick leather gloves, the traveler began to dig a narrow trench or burrow. The dimensions of this shelter were calculated with precision. It had to be just large enough to accommodate a person lying down. Extra space was the enemy, as it would have to be heated by the warmth of one's own body. This required sacrificing comfort for the sake of survival. The walls of such a snow grave were very quickly covered with a thin crust of ice from the warm breath of the person inside. This crust created an additional wind barrier, sealing the interior space. The temperature inside such a shelter could remain stable at around 0 degrees, even if it was 40 degrees below zero outside. This microclimate allowed people to survive the most terrible night without serious consequences for their health. Instead of fussing, they chose conscious numbness, allowing the cold to surround their bodies but not penetrate the protective cocoon of their clothing. They curled up into a tight ball, hid their faces, covered their hands, and reduced the area of contact with the icy air. A person found themselves in a kind of natural thermos, where they themselves became the main and only source of heat. Time passed differently here, and the main task was to remain calm. However, there was one critically important rule, the slightest violation of which threatened death even in an ideal shelter. It was essential to prevent clothing from getting wet from melting snow or sweat caused by fear or unnecessary movement. Therefore, before climbing into the snow, a person carefully shook off the icy dust and checked the tightness of their clothing. Moisture was a traitor that opened the door to the cold. A thick layer of spruce branches, dry grass, or pieces of bark was always laid at the bottom of such a trench. If there was no suitable material nearby, a saddle or other pieces of equipment were used. This created the necessary layer between the body and the cold ground, preventing conductive heat loss. Without such insulation, the icy ground would quickly draw all the energy from the sleeper's body. The entrance to the burrow was blocked with a block of snow or covered with a backpack, leaving only a tiny hole for ventilation. If this hole was too large, precious heat would instantly escape. If it was too small, the person risked suffocating in their sleep from lack of oxygen. Only those who had learned to listen to the snow and wind since childhood could find this delicate balance. Many European travelers looked at this practice with genuine horror, considering it complete madness. It seemed unthinkable to them to voluntarily bury themselves in what they believed to be the source of death. But by morning, it was those who trusted the snow and overcame their prejudices who came out alive. Those who tried to wait out the storm in the open air often remained in the snow forever. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, where there are also harsh winters and blizzards. Do you agree that sometimes you have to act against your intuition in order to survive? Where are you watching us from, and have you ever been in similar extreme conditions? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories about survival in the wild. Want to know the secret that allowed people to build a life-saving fire even when all the wood was wet and frozen? In a sudden blizzard, the time it takes to make a fire by friction or striking sparks could cost you your life. Frozen hands quickly lost their dexterity, becoming unresponsive and unable to hold a flint. And strong gusts of wind blew away any tinder, even the driest, before it had a chance to ignite. That's why wise travelers and experienced warriors never set out on a long journey without a backup. They always carried their own pre-prepared and securely hidden source of fire. For this, they used a special type of wood-growing fungus that grew on old trees. This fungus had the unique properties of slow and steady smoldering. Hunters looked for deep snowdrifts or dense accumulations formed in ravines, behind large boulders, near riverbanks, or among thickets of bushes to burrow into them like animals into their dens. This was not an act of desperation, but a well-developed survival tactic. It was important to find not loose powder snow, but snow that had already settled a little under the influence of the wind. Air access to the smoldering coal was regulated by a cork with small, carefully made holes. This allowed the coal to breathe and not go out, but at the same time not burn too quickly. This precious container was hung from the belt under the outer clothing, closer to the body. There it was, kept warm and dry, additionally warming its owner with its gentle heat. When there was an urgent need to stop for the night in the icy desert, a person did not have to expend their last reserves of strength. They did not have to search for dry moss under the snow or struggle to strike a spark in the wind. The traveler simply took a smoldering ember from their case and placed it in a nest of dry grass. The flame flared up in seconds, providing light and warmth. This gave a huge, often decisive advantage over the raging elements in the first minutes of the stop. The ability to get warmth almost instantly prevented travelers from freezing completely while setting up camp. Even a small fire in a snow pit changed a person's psychological state, giving them hope. In addition, it allowed them to quickly melt snow for drinking, preventing dehydration. However, building a fire in such extreme conditions required special discipline and strict moderation. A large flame was dangerous because it could get out of control or become too visible to enemies. A large fire required a lot of firewood, which had to be fetched from far away, causing heat loss. In addition, the heat could melt the walls of the snow shelter, destroying it. The Indians preferred small, economical fires that provided just enough heat to survive. They used a so-called star fire, where several logs were placed in the center of each other. As the logs burned, they simply moved toward the center, keeping the fire going. This was an extremely effective technique that saved energy and fuel. This method allowed the fire to be maintained for a long time without the need to constantly get up and throw new branches on it. In addition, such a fire produced relatively little acrid smoke. This was critically important if the shelter was closed or semi-closed so as not to suffocate. The smoke escaped through a small hole in the roof, while the heat remained below. Mastering portable fire was considered a sign of an experienced and prudent warrior, ready for any surprises fate might throw at them. This skill was passed down from generation to generation as one of the tribe's greatest treasures and secrets. Losing your fire on the road was considered a bad omen and a sign of carelessness. What do you think is more important in an extreme situation? The ability to make fire from scratch or the ability to keep it going? What if I showed you a natural material that surpassed many modern synthetic insulators in terms of its thermal insulation properties? In extreme cold, the greatest and most real danger was to the extremities, especially the feet. They were in constant contact with the icy ground and snow, losing heat the fastest. Soft leather moccasins were comfortable for silent hunting, but on their own they did not provide adequate protection from deep freezing. The solution was ordinary, seemingly dry grass, which was collected on the plains in late summer and autumn. This was not random vegetation, but specially selected varieties, such as sedge, which did not break when dried. This grass became the main secret to keeping feet warm during long winter journeys. Preparing the right grass was an important part of getting ready for winter. It was not just a chaotic stuffing of shoes, but a well-thought-out engineering system for creating an air gap. Certain varieties of grass had hollow tubular stems that were strong and elastic. These stems acted as thousands of microscopic air chambers, trapping warm air inside. In fact, it was a natural analog of modern polar fleece or hollow fiber. Bundles of this grass were laid in a special way inside the moccasins, creating a complex structure. The foot was wrapped on all sides, forming a soft and warm cocoon that did not come undone when walking. The layer of grass reliably insulated the foot from the cold leather of the shoe, preventing contact cooling. In addition, this design allowed the foot to breathe and not sweat. The grass served another important function. It excellently removed excess moisture from the skin. If the foot sweated during fast walking, the grass absorbed the moisture, leaving the skin dry. This was critically important as a wet foot freezes dozens of times faster in the cold. In the evening, the wet grass was simply removed and dried by the fire. If the grass got too wet or crumpled, losing its properties, it was thrown away without regret. The insulation could be replaced at any time, as this resource was widely available on the plains. Unlike wool socks, which took a long time to dry and mend, grass insulation was disposable. This also ensured excellent foot hygiene in camping conditions. These chambers worked like natural batteries, trapping heat and preventing it from escaping. The bison or deer skin, facing outwards, served as an impenetrable barrier against wind, snow, and icy gusts, which could blow the heat out of even a thick layer of clothing in a matter of minutes. This design was much more effective than a regular fur coat because it prevented cold air from circulating between. This principle of dead air is the basis of all modern thermal insulation materials, from down jackets to construction wool. The Indians intuitively came to this discovery by observing animals and experimenting with natural materials. They noticed how animals used dry grass to insulate their burrows and adopted this practice. Nature itself provided solutions to those who knew how to look. Protecting the hands was no less important, so winter mittens were often made very long, reaching up to the elbow. They were also insulated with grass or fur on the inside, creating a layer that was impenetrable to the wind. Mittens were always attached to a strong cord around the neck or shoulders. This ensured that they could not be lost even if dropped or in the turmoil of a storm. Losing a mitten in a blizzard was tantamount to signing your own death warrant. Frozen, stiff fingers could not hold a weapon, untie a knot, or light a life-saving fire. Therefore, the system for fastening and insulating the hands was thought out down to the smallest detail. Appreciate this simple life hack by liking the video if you are amazed by the ingenuity of ancient people. Are you ready for the shocking truth about what people ate to keep from freezing to death in the snow? External heat from a fire or warm clothing was useless if the body did not produce enough energy from within. Moccasins were sewn with a large allowance in size so that dry grass or moss could be stuffed inside as additional insulation. This natural filling created a soft cushion that retained heat around the foot. The Indians knew very well that the best and most effective fuel for this internal fire was pure animal fat. Lean foods, such as pure dried meat, roots, or berries, provided energy too slowly. They could not provide the sharp burst of heat needed to warm a freezing body. Protein required energy to digest, and carbohydrates burned too quickly. Therefore, the main winter food and strategic reserve was pemmican, the legendary food of travelers and warriors. It was a concentrated mixture of dried and powdered bison meat and large amounts of melted fat. Sometimes sour berries were added for flavor and vitamins, but fat always remained the basis. This product did not spoil for years and was not affected by heat or cold. Pemmican was incredibly compact and had a tremendous energy density, surpassing modern dry rations. A piece of pemmican the size of a palm could sustain an adult man for a whole day of hard travel. The fat began to digest and provide warmth almost immediately after consumption. This triggered a powerful furnace inside the body, accelerating blood flow. Before going to sleep on a cold night, it was vital to eat a portion of fatty food, even if you weren't hungry. This provided the body with the energy it needed to generate heat until morning. A hungry person froze much faster in their sleep as the body ran out of resources for thermoregulation. Eating before bed was as much a safety measure as building a shelter. Sometimes when pemmican supplies ran low, pure bone marrow or the internal fat of hunted animals would be used. Hunters could crack large bones and eat raw brain right at the site of the kill. This may seem unappetizing and wild to modern people accustomed to supermarkets. But in those harsh conditions, it was the taste of life, the taste of pure warmth and salvation. In addition, drinking plenty of hot liquids played an important role if it was possible to build a fire. Decoctions of various herbs, pine needles, or bark help maintain water balance and warm the body from within. Coniferous decoctions also served as a source of vitamin C, protecting against scurvy and strengthening the immune system. The liquid helped the blood circulate faster, delivering heat to the extremities. Dehydration in the cold came on imperceptibly, as the cold air is very dry and thirst is not felt as acutely. Loss of moisture thickened the blood, leading to rapid hypothermia of the hands and feet and increasing the risk of frostbite. Therefore, experienced survivalists forced themselves to drink snow water or tea. Monitoring hydration was a strict rule. A proper, high-calorie diet was as essential a part of a survivalist's equipment as a sharp knife. The ability to listen to the needs of one's body and provide it with energy in a timely manner saved many lives in the snowy desert. The food culture on the plains was completely adapted to the harsh climatic cycles of the region. Food was not perceived as a source of pleasure, but as fuel to fight death. Did you know that fatty foods are the best and fastest way to warm up in severe cold? Share in the comments what foods you take with you on winter hikes or walks. Do you consider pemmican to be the ideal survival food, or would you prefer something else? If there was not enough snow to dig a deep trench, shelters had to be built from what the forest provided. One of the quickest and most effective structures to build was a low canopy made of branches. It did not require any complicated tools and could be erected in a short time by one person. The main thing was to find a suitable place where nature had already done some of the work. To build it, they usually found a fallen tree or a low-hanging sturdy branch. This log served as the main supporting beam to which the entire frame was attached. Many branches were placed at an angle to it, creating a sloping roof facing the wind. The denser the branches were laid, the more reliable the protection was. This wooden frame was tightly packed with thick spruce branches, dry grass, and leaves, creating a thick cushion. The structure was then covered with snow, which in this case acted as cement and excellent insulation. The snow filled all the gaps, preventing drafts and heat loss. The thicker the layer of snow and branches, the warmer it became inside this improvised tent. Inside the shelter, the ground was carefully cleared down to the soil, removing snow and ice. Snow under a warm body could melt and wet clothes, which was unacceptable. The bare ground was covered with a thick, springy layer of coniferous branches, creating an insulating mattress. Such bedding not only kept them warm, but also smelled pleasant, creating a feeling of comfort. A fire was lit in front of the open entrance to such a shelter, with a reflector placed behind it. The reflector was made of wet logs or stacked stones to direct the heat inside the shelter. The heat from the fire, reflecting off the walls, fell directly on the sleeping people, creating a zone of comfort. This allowed them to sleep without outer clothing or to dry wet clothes. This simple design allowed even a group of people sheltering together to survive the night. People lay close to each other, warming their neighbors with the heat of their bodies. The main thing was to choose the right place and direction of the entrance, taking into account the wind. If the wind changed, smoke from the fire could be drawn inside, making rest impossible. In more wooded areas, where there was plenty of building material, cone-shaped huts were built. They resembled miniature teepees and were covered with large pieces of bark and spruce branches. Such huts required more time and effort to build, but provided better protection. In them, it was possible to wait out prolonged bad weather in complete safety. An important point in construction was not to make the shelter too high and spacious. Warm air always rises, and in a high hut, all the heat would escape under the roof. A low ceiling kept the precious heat right where the people were lying. Efficiency was prioritized over ease of movement. The art of quickly erecting a shelter from improvised materials was practiced by boys from an early age. It became an automatic skill, with their hands knowing what to do, even in the dark. Any hunter could build himself a reliable home in half an hour, using only a knife and a small axe. This gave a sense of confidence in any situation. These temporary dwellings, despite their outward plainness and roughness, were true masterpieces of engineering. They proved that comfort and safety are not expensive things from a store. It is the ability to create livable conditions from literally nothing. Survival depended on knowledge, not equipment. What if I told you that the main enemy on the plains was not the bitter cold, but the piercing wind? Even at relatively low sub-zero temperatures, strong winds can blow all the heat out of your clothes in a matter of minutes. The Indians understood the deadly danger of the wind chill factor long before the advent of modern meteorologists. Therefore, the first and most important step to survival was not a fire, but finding natural shelter from the wind. The experienced eye of a hunter always scanned the terrain in search of life-saving ravines and lowlands. The beds of dry streams or leeward slopes of hills could be the perfect place to spend the night. There below, the wind swept high above, leaving a zone of relative calm below. The difference in sensation between the top of the hill and its foot was enormous. Rock ledges and small caves were also desirable shelters, but required extreme caution. Dangerous predators such as bears or mountain lions could hibernate in caves. An encounter with an awakened beast in a confined space was deadly dangerous and undesirable. Therefore, before occupying a cave, it was carefully checked for fresh tracks and smells. Dense undergrowth or thick willow thickets in river valleys were excellent at reducing wind speed. They acted as a natural filter, trapping snow and creating a quiet haven. Inside such thickets, a microclimate was created, where it was much quieter and warmer. Wild animals often hid in such places, also seeking refuge from the storm. However, it was necessary to avoid the lowest points in deep hollows and pits. According to the laws of physics, the coldest and heaviest air flowed there, forming frost lakes. The temperature in such a pit could be 10 degrees lower than on the slope. The ideal place was the golden mean on the hillside, protected from the wind but not a trap for the cold. The ability to read the landscape and predict the movement of air masses was a vital skill for everyone. The traveler looked closely at the shape of the snowdrifts and the slope of solitary trees. These signs unerringly indicated the prevailing wind direction in the area over the past few days. Nature itself drew a map of safe areas for those who knew how to see. Sometimes there were simply no natural shelters on the flat plain, and there was nowhere to hide. Then it was necessary to create artificial windbreaks from dense snow blocks or equipment. A wall only half a meter high, placed in a semicircle, could save a life by diverting the flow of icy air upward. Behind such a wall, a person could lie in relative calm. Taking advantage of the terrain allowed them to significantly conserve their body's resources and fuel for the fire. The less the icy wind affected the shelter, the easier it was to maintain an acceptable temperature inside. It was a tactic of avoiding direct confrontation with the elements and exploiting their weaknesses. A smart warrior did not fight the wind, he hid from it. The nature of the Great Plains was harsh and unforgiving of mistakes, but it always left a chance. It gave clues to those who knew how to see them and interpret them correctly under stressful conditions. Every inconspicuous hollow and every large stone could become an ally in the struggle for survival. Attention to detail in the landscape often became a decisive factor. The tough, tanned bison hide was itself an excellent insulator, preventing moisture from seeping in from below. Sometimes horse saddles and blankets were used, placed under the most important parts of the body, the torso and pelvis. One of the most unusual and little-known ways to protect against the cold was to apply fat directly to the skin. A thick layer of a mixture of bear fat, raccoon fat, or bison fat was applied to the face and hands. Other exposed areas of the body that could be affected by frost were also lubricated. This was an ancient practice, the effectiveness of which had been proven over centuries. This layer of fat performed several critical functions at once, serving as a universal protective agent. First, it created a thin but impermeable film that prevented moisture evaporation. Dehydrated skin loses its protective properties and becomes vulnerable to the cold. The fat film retained natural moisture inside, maintaining the elasticity of the skin. Dry, chapped skin loses precious heat much faster and is prone to painful cracking in the cold. Cracks on the hands and face could become gateways for dangerous infections in unsanitary conditions. Fat reliably preserved the integrity of the skin and protected it from aggressive chapping and frostbite. It was a kind of natural spacesuit for the skin. Secondly, the layer of fat acted as additional insulation, albeit very thin. It literally sealed the pores, preventing precious heat from leaving the body through radiation and sweat evaporation. This allowed the body to expend less energy on heating the skin surface. In conditions of calorie deficiency, every unit of heat saved was worth its weight in gold. Red ochre, coal dust, or other natural pigments were often added to the fat base. This may have had a deep ritual significance, protecting the warrior from the evil spirits of winter. But there was also a practical theory that dark colors better absorb the weak solar heat. On clear, frosty days, dark skin on the face could heat up slightly more. This method was widely used not only by the tribes of the plains, but also by peoples living further north. To pampered European travelers, this custom seemed wild, dirty, and unhygienic. However, they quickly changed their minds when they saw that the Indians did not suffer from frostbite. The effectiveness of the method outweighed any aesthetic prejudices. The protruding parts of the face, the nose, ears, and cheekbones, were lubricated especially thoroughly and thickly. These areas were the first to suffer from frostbite, as blood circulation in them slowed down in the cold. The layer of fat allowed hunters to spend hours in the biting wind tracking their prey. They did not fear losing sensitivity in their faces or suffering irreversible damage. The smell of this cream was, to put it mildly, distinctive and very persistent, permeating everything around. But in real survival conditions, questions of smell and beauty took a back seat. The main and only criterion was functionality and the ability to preserve health in life. Survival required a pragmatic approach to everything. Washing off this protective layer of fat throughout the winter was strongly discouraged. It accumulated, absorbed, and renewed itself naturally, creating a stable barrier. It was a kind of biological armor created by nature itself and reinforced by humans. The skin adapted to the cold under the protection of this layer. It is noteworthy that today, professional polar explorers and mountaineers use similar methods. Special water-free, oily creams are used to protect the face during extreme climbs. Ancient knowledge, which seemed primitive, is once again finding application in the modern world of high technology. The experience of our ancestors has remained relevant even after centuries. A lone traveler in the endless, snow-covered steppe had virtually no chance of survival on a harsh winter night. The wind on the Great Plains blew with such force that it penetrated any clothing in a matter of minutes. From early childhood, Native Americans learned the harsh lesson of nature that alone, man is weak and vulnerable. The chances of survival depended directly on the cohesion of the group and the ability to act together. The Indians used their understanding of the value of collective warmth to maximum effect in any dangerous situation. This was not just a tribute to the traditions of their ancestors, but the only correct strategy for the biological survival of the species in an extreme climate. People understood that the warmth of the human body was the most accessible and reliable resource in the icy desert. The more people gathered together, the higher the probability of surviving until dawn without frostbite. In the event of an emergency overnight stay without shelter, when there was no time to set up tents, people lay down directly on the snow in one tight group. They did not hesitate to press their backs or sides against each other, casting aside any prejudices for the sake of preserving life. At such moments, the tribe became a single living organism that breathed and warmed itself as one. This was the only way to withstand the deadly cold of the open spaces. The main item of personal equipment and the pride of every Plains Indian was a bison hide, often called a robe. Losing it on a winter expedition was tantamount to suicide, so it was cherished more than any weapon. It was not just warm clothing or a beautiful accessory indicating a successful hunter. The robe was a real mobile home that was always with you. The skin served as a soft bed, a warm blanket, a waterproof cloak, and a shield from the piercing wind all at once. Without it, an Indian felt naked and defenseless against the elements, no matter how warm his other clothes were. The quality of the hide's finish determined the social status of its owner and directly affected his chances of survival. The women of the tribe worked for many days to prepare such a hide, transforming the raw material into a masterpiece. The bison hide had unique natural properties that made it an ideal insulator in the harsh winters of North America. Nature endowed the bison with protection that could withstand severe frosts and snowstorms. The thick, curly, and incredibly dense fur perfectly retained a layer of warm air close to the body. Even modern synthetic materials cannot always compare with these properties. The thick skin of the bison was incredibly durable and acted as a reliable barrier against the external environment. It did not let in the icy steppe wind, which was the main enemy of any living creature on the plain. In addition, properly tanned leather did not get wet from the snow, keeping the inside dry. One such skin could weigh a lot, but on a hike it was worth every gram of its weight. At night, a person would wrap themselves completely in the skin with the fur inside, trying not to leave the slightest gap for cold air to enter. This required a certain skill to tuck the edges under oneself, creating an airtight space. The result was a closed cocoon that retained all the heat generated by the body. Outside, such a cocoon could be covered with frost or snow, but inside the person was dry and warm. Another skin was used on top as a large shared blanket, covering several people at once. This design resembled a layer cake, inside which precious heat was reliably preserved. The air pockets between the fur fibers created a thermos effect. This allowed people to sleep even in extremely low temperatures. Under such a heavy and dense cover, a special warm microclimate was quickly created, comfortable for sleeping. The weight of the skin also played a role, pressing the edges tightly to the ground and preventing the wind from blowing inside. The temperature inside such a shelter could be significantly higher than outside, sometimes by tens of degrees. This was due to the complete absence of cold air circulation under the cape. Stones for such purposes were selected in advance and with great expertise, as a mistake could be costly. The Indians preferred rocks that did not crack or explode from the intense heat of the fire. They usually avoided river stones saturated with moisture, as they could split and cause injury. The ability to choose the right stone was also an important survival skill in the wild. Sleeping in a group under several sewn or simply layered skins was even more effective than sleeping alone. In such an improvised shelter, the common space quickly warmed up with the breath and body heat of several people. People huddled together, creating quite comfortable conditions even in the middle of a snowy field. The air inside became warm and humid, which protected the lungs from the frosty dryness. In such a cozy den, it was possible to wait out even the longest and coldest storm, which could last for several days. People shared their warmth, literally sustaining each other's lives with their bodies. Psychologically, it was also much easier to endure the storm in close company than alone. The feeling of solidarity gave strength and confidence that the group would cope with the ordeal. The ability to share warmth and care for others was not just a good habit, but the basis for the survival of the community as a whole. Selfishness and attempts to keep warm alone in such extreme conditions inevitably led to the death of the outcast. Mutual aid on the plains was not a matter of high morality, but a harsh and pragmatic guarantee of life for every member of the tribe. The tribe survived only as a single entity where everyone was important. The bison hide was a sacred symbol of life on the Great Plains for all indigenous peoples. This animal provided people with food for the body, material for shelter, and, most importantly, life-saving warmth in winter. Its loss was equivalent to the loss of home and all means of subsistence in the modern sense of the word. The attitude towards the bison was imbued with deep respect, gratitude, and an understanding of the inseparable connection between man and nature. Survival began long before the first frost or the first snowfall. It began with the ability to foresee danger and read the hidden signs of the surrounding world. The Indians were unsurpassed meteorologists who read the great book of nature better than any modern instrument. Their lives depended on the accuracy of these predictions. They noticed the slightest, barely perceptible changes in the behavior of wild animals. Animals sensed a drop in atmospheric pressure long before a storm began. If bison began to huddle together in tight groups, turning their tails to the wind, it was a signal. If birds suddenly fell silent and hid in the thicket of the forest, it was a sure sign of impending trouble. The color of the sky, the shape of the clouds, and even the hue of the sunset could tell an experienced shaman or hunter a lot. A halo, a glowing ring around the moon or sun, often heralded a sharp cold snap and snowfall. Feathery clouds covering the horizon in a certain pattern signaled the approach of a weather front. This knowledge had been accumulated over centuries of observation. Sounds in the frosty air traveled differently, becoming more ringing, sharp, and distinct. The crunch of snow underfoot changed its tone as the temperature dropped. An experienced tracker could determine the approximate air temperature by ear. Nature itself served as a natural and very accurate thermometer. Noticing the first signs of an approaching blizzard, the group immediately stopped moving. Speed of reaction was critically important in open terrain. It was better to stop early, losing time, but preparing for the onslaught of the elements. Being caught in a storm on the road without shelter meant almost certain death. They knew that a strong blizzard could last for several days, cutting off the path to salvation. Therefore, people immediately began to stock up on dry firewood and prepare food while it was still possible. Ignoring the signs of nature was considered not a sign of courage, but stupidity. Nature did not forgive arrogance and punished it with death. Observing the direction of the wind helped not only in predicting the weather, but also in navigation. Snow ridges, hard ridges formed by the wind on the snow, always had a specific orientation. They indicated the prevailing direction of the winds and the cardinal points. It was a reliable map drawn on the snow by the wind. This allowed people to find their way even in poor visibility conditions, when the sky was overcast with clouds. When neither the sun nor the stars were visible, snow ridges became the only point of reference. Nature itself provided a compass to those who knew how to read it and understand the language of snow. Losing your bearings in the steppe was worse than the cold. This unique knowledge was passed down orally in the form of omens, legends, and instructive stories. Children memorized them from an early age, sitting by the fire and listening to the elders. Every adult member of the tribe was a bearer of this vital information. Without this knowledge, the tribe could not have survived in such conditions. Respect for the elements and extreme attention to detail were the main tools in the arsenal of survival. Man did not try to conquer nature or fight it. He tried to become a harmonious part of it, anticipating its whims and adapting to them. It was a philosophy of living in harmony with the world. The most difficult test during a prolonged snowstorm was not the physical suffering from the cold. The main enemy was the psychological pressure of uncertainty and confined space. When a person was locked in a cramped snow shelter for several days, the main threat was panic. Fear could kill faster than frost. The Indians possessed a unique, almost supernatural ability to fall into a special state of calm. It was like a trance or deep meditation that allowed them to disconnect from reality. They could remain completely motionless for hours or even days, lying under animal skins. In this state, the body switched to maximum energy conservation mode. Hustle and bustle, restlessness, and unnecessary movements in a confined space were deadly dangerous. Activity led to overheating and sweating, which ultimately led to wet clothes and freezing. In addition, physical activity required more food, which was in limited supply. Immobility was the best way to conserve heat and resources. The ability to turn off consciousness and wait patiently for the storm to end was instilled in children from an early age. It was a special philosophy of accepting circumstances beyond human control. If you cannot change the weather, you must change your attitude towards it. Patience was a warrior's main weapon against time. In the darkness of a snowy burrow, amid the howling wind, people told each other quiet stories. They sang monotonous songs or recalled the legends of their ancestors to keep their spirits up. The voice of a comrade was an anchor that kept the mind from sinking into the abyss of madness. Communication helped them not to feel alone in the face of the elements. Fear was a natural reaction of any living creature to a threat to life. But warriors did not allow it to take over their minds and paralyze their will. Controlling their emotions was as important as controlling the fire in the hearth. Panic led to mistakes, and mistakes in such conditions were fatal. They knew for sure that any storm, even the most terrible one, would end sooner or later. The wind would die down, and the sun would come out again, illuminating the endless snow. This unshakable faith and stoic patience allowed them to survive the darkest and coldest nights. Hope was the inner core that kept them from breaking. It is difficult for modern people, accustomed to constant action and control over the situation, to imagine this. Forced passivity seems to us to be torture and a sign of weakness. But it was precisely in this conscious inaction that the greatest activity in the struggle for life lay. It was action through inaction, the wisdom of survival. The psychological resilience of the warriors of the plains evoked sincere admiration even from their enemies. American soldiers marveled at the Indians' ability to endure hardship with stony faces. It was a strength of spirit, tempered by the winds and frosts of their harsh homeland over centuries. Their character was as firm as the ground beneath the snow. Survival was not just a set of technical techniques and skills. It was a special state of mind, ready for anything and accepting any challenge fate threw at them. And this lesson of calmness in the face of relentless nature remains relevant at all times. In any crisis situation, the winner is the one who knows how to wait and keep a cool head. The history of the survival of the indigenous peoples of North America in extreme winter conditions is not just an ethnographic fact. It is a chronicle of incredible human ingenuity, courage, and unyielding fortitude. They did not have advanced technology, but they possessed a deep wisdom that allowed them to thrive where others perished. Their methods, using snow as a blanket, grass as insulation, and fat as food and protection, demonstrate the amazing adaptability of humans. We saw how simple things became tools of salvation in skilled hands, how knowledge of nature replaced complex devices, and discipline of the mind overcame fear. These lessons from the past remind us that humans are part of nature, not its masters, and survival is only possible in harmony with the surrounding world, understanding its laws. Which of these ancient survival methods did you find the most surprising, ingenious, or unexpected? Would you risk spending the night in a snow cave with only a bison skin and a bunch of grass? Write your thoughts in the comments and perhaps suggest topics you would like to learn about in future episodes. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss out on new exciting journeys into the past.